folks, this is Dave Cricks, broadcasting to you from Leigh-on-Sea in the southeast of England. I'm a bit of a creative type, a music coach, mainly for acoustic guitarists and singer-songwriters at Rhythm Shack. I released my first album in 2020. I also paint a bit and like getting outdoors. So you're listening to the Satisfy My Soul interview series from Soul Shack, where we hunker down, dig in and talk about what lights our candles, floats our boats, and generally makes life worthwhile. So grab yourself a cuppa and let's see if today's discussion can help satisfy your soul. Okay, so, hey folks, slight technical hitch, but we've got this hopefully recording again now. Today I'm talking to Jules Bassett about music, and I think probably most specifically about singing. Jules grew up with two grandfathers who loved to bash out a tune on the piano while they all sung along. And I was saying earlier, I was kind of jealous about that really, because I never got that. As a child, you were in the school choir and also learned to play the piano and clarinet. Large chunk of life without music was you were working and travelling and had a bit of freedom. We should mention that you are now, of course, a mother of three boys. Several things that satisfy your soul. I think that's probably true for most of us, but you feel like you don't have enough time to commit to any of them. Again, it's probably the mother of three boys thing, I would have thought. And of course, recently, a few years ago, you got back into guitar lessons, coming to Rhythm Shack. And I made a note here. It says, as much as I enjoy the guitar, I enjoy singing. And that is probably the bit that satisfies your soul the most. We'll come on to that, but only when nobody's listening. So, first of all, Jules, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. The sun is shining, it's cold, but it's a beautiful day.
And you managed to get the boys out of the house, which ironically is what we were just talking about, isn't it? It's having the time to do it.
Yeah, time is a massive thing in this house, definitely. But when you do, you feel so much better for it when you give yourself that time.
It's important, isn't it? Absolutely. And I know that you struggle with your time because obviously you've been coming here for a while, and I know that finding the time to play the guitar and finding the time to sing is always difficult. But don't you find that with singing it's even harder because it's probably more important, I would imagine, to have that extra bit of time and that bit of space to yourself because you don't necessarily want people to hear you practicing?
Well, as you know, I lack quite a lot of self-confidence. With me, singing, it's an enjoyment. I love it. But I don't necessarily feel like I'm the best at it, and I don't necessarily like people listening to me sing, unless it's a bunch of really good friends with a bottle of wine on the table and we're singing to some, old 80s song or something. Then that's a bit different. But otherwise, you're absolutely right. I'm not very confident. So singing for me needs to be done when there's nobody else around, and that's very difficult, especially in lockdown when you've got three young boys. So yeah, it's a big problem. Absolutely,
and I think a lot of people, certainly a lot of the people who come here, would relate to that completely because confidence is, one of the biggest things that I have to help people with, and it's really hard to be confident when you don't feel like what you're doing is good enough, and of course that's a whole, mindset thing that we've talked about. It's interesting though, one of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning was that you grew up with two grandfathers who loved to play on the piano while the family kind of sung along. But, I bet nobody was kind of judging anybody's performance there, were they? I don't know.
No, not at all, of course not. They would just bash out a tune. One of my grandfathers played by ear, so he was very lucky. He used to just play whatever by ear. In fact, I've inherited his piano now, which is really lovely.
Oh, really?
But no, there were no confidence there. They used to just go, come on, let's have a sing along, and sea shanties and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, really? Excellent.
But I think the difference now is, I don't know, I think something I've always done, and I don't know whether many other people do this as well, it's the comparing yourself to other people.
Definitely.
And that's where then the confidence lacks even more.
And it's a really natural thing to compare yourself to other people. I mean, you can't help it. It's when you think about it, there are many reasons why that's a good thing to do in life, because it gives you it gets you a benchmark or a playing field and so you can work out how you're getting on with things. Unfortunately, I think with singing, a lot of people compare themselves to highly successful singers who go into multi-million-pound studios and have their voice tweaked as much as possible, and also who are so good that they are paid, serious amounts of money to go around the world and do this for a living. And then we go, well, I should be as good as him. And then when you think about it, that doesn't really make sense. So the comparison thing is a really difficult one. You can't, you can't compare yourself to, I don't know, Bon Jovi and Rod Stewart and, whoever, because, the whole point of those guys really is that they have exceptional voices, and I think it's a really good. I'm really glad you made that point, because, comparing yourself to someone with an exceptional voice, if someone else was doing it, if your kids were doing that, you'd say, well, no, don't be silly, because it's not realistic, and these kind of things. Whereas when you do it yourself,
exactly, and if you're telling them, all you need to do is try. All you need to do is put the effort in and try your best.
Exactly.
You don't listen when it's yourself. That's the advice you don't listen to. You go, no, because I'm rubbish.
Exactly. And yet, you'd think in some ways that we might go, well, do you know what? I'm not as good as the multi-million-pound rock stars and stuff, therefore I'll give up. But interestingly, what we do is we beat ourselves up instead, but continue, which I suppose in some ways is an interesting thing, because perhaps that kind of shows how important it is, I suppose, to people. I mean, obviously we're talking about how it satisfies your soul, and despite, the lack of confidence, which, as I say, is common to lots of people, we still continue to sing. So, we still obviously get an enjoyment out of it. And I'd be quite interested, obviously, I teach singing, so this is a particularly unusual interview in as much as, I have probably quite an interesting opinion on it, or a considered opinion on it as well. But for you, let's just say, the confidence, you said it's hard to be confident, and I get that. That's fairly universal for most people. So but you keep doing it. So what is it? Can you even try to describe what it is that you get out of singing?
I'm going to try and describe it. I'm going to try and describe it, because I think this is what it's all about. From my understanding of this interview, you're talking about satisfying the soul. So for me, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, but I feel like everybody probably feels that satisfying the soul is a different thing, right? It's an individual thing, and I kind of feel, for me, like soul is almost like a smouldering energy that's within us. It's just there, and it's just smouldering, and we don't always use it, but now and again we do it, and it's like, for example, I'm going to use an example. If you step outside, like a day like today, it's beautiful, it's really sunny.
Yeah.
I would step outside and feel the sun on my face, and it would ignite that smouldering energy that's inside you. And that, to me, feels like that's your soul. And that's when you really connect with it, and it makes you feel really good. And there could be days and maybe weeks sometimes where you go along and that doesn't happen. It's there, but it doesn't happen. And it could be something like, walking out in the sunshine. It could be something like gardening that does it. There could be lots of different things. You're going to swim, doing something like for charity that's really, really makes you feel good inside. It can be anything like that connects and makes that energy within you. And I think that's what is satisfying your soul. And therefore, if I get that opportunity where there's nobody in the house and I can just go in and I can shut the door, in my little room, which I call my bar, but it's got all the music stuff in it as well, and I go in there and I can have a really good sing, and even if it's rubbish, pick up the guitar and just sing along to something. I come out of that room afterwards feeling energized, and I feel like my soul has been satisfied.
It's really interesting. I wasn't expecting you to try and define, in that way, but that's a really interesting point of view, and I totally get what you're saying. And I think for me, what I'm taking from that is it's a bit deeper. It can be really simple, like you say, just like the sun coming out and a decent weather, or it can be quite a simple thing, but it's a bit deeper than.
Absolutely.
It's a bit deeper than I don't know, having a pizza. It's different, isn't it? and I'm kind of thinking this is kind of whirring as I'm talking to you. I feel that singing is very much a primal thing. It's very much a human thing. You know what I mean? It's not something of modern making. It's it can be, but it's not necessarily that. I think it's something quite deep inside you.
It's your own instrument, really, isn't it? I guess.
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing as a singer. You know, you are the instrument, aren't you? Which you can be good and bad because some days you can be out of tune or in need of repair or something.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, it's quite often out of tune. It doesn't always go right at all, but it's just the pleasure you get out of it. I think of just really, really going for it and engaging with the music. Because equally as well, listening to music. Music isn't just about what you're performing. Some days when just listening to the right tune and the right track for your headspace is something else, that time again where you can just sit and absorb that music through you is amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Music is a massively powerful mood changer, isn't it? It's a very. I mean, there aren't that many things that make the old hairs on the back of your neck stick up, but music's probably one of them. And it can do that quite quickly. Just a turn of phrase or a little bit of a melody, the way the melody changes and. All the technical stuff underneath, all the chords and this, that, and the other. But on a purely primal level, it's quite deep, isn't it?
Yeah, and also there are so many different types of music as well.
Yeah.
So you could be listening. Sometimes I just fancy listening to a bit of classical music, even just that's just perfect. And then other times, if I'm a bit angry and I want something a bit rocky, I'll stick Blink 182 on or something like that, which is completely the opposite of listening to some classical music. And that's what's fantastic about music, I think. It can get in there and, satisfy your soul.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think, I think having eclectic tastes is perhaps is an indication that you have eclectic moods and various moods. I slightly worry about people who only like one kind of music. I'm not quite sure what that's doing or if they're kind of on one level, I don't know. It's interesting, and I made a note up here. I mean, about the primal aspects of music and how it kind of is good for your soul. I think if you go back in history, chanting goes back, I don't know, hundreds of years, I guess. And when you think about slave music and people singing while they're working on the railroads and this kind of stuff, they're doing that to lift their spirits. And gospel music, I mean, it's all about lifting your spirit, so it is something that I think everybody's got it in them. Everybody understands it, even if they haven't necessarily thought about it. It's a very primal thing. It's an age-old way of lifting your spirits, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not singing, there's the rhythm and everything else that goes with it. And, so there are lots of different parts of the music that everybody, I think, can engage in. Even if you're tone deaf, you can probably get some kind of rhythm or something like that. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And of course, I was just thinking about the gospel thing as well, and as you say, there's a rhythm, there's a beat. That's also, rhythm is also quite a very primal thing as well. Drum beats and stuff like that. And then when you add that to a vocal, that's quite a powerful thing in itself. And of course, the other thing that occurs to me, I think, with singing, I'd see what you think of this, but I think with singing also, like, it's a bit like, I'm going to ask the question, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Have you ever felt like you just want to scream? Well, music kind of is that in a way, or it can be that, can't it? But you're just adding a bit of melody and making it socially acceptable, If you go around the house just screaming, people could get upset. But if you go around singing something really, really loud, it's very close. Physically, it's a very close thing. It's a very powerful release of emotion.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you can sing, as we say, at the top of your voice and get that out in that way as well. Yeah, that takes me back to, back to the 80s, and there is nothing better than sticking on a Prince record and just singing your heart out,
Yeah, it is a powerful thing. If it's a physical thing, it's a release. It's a physical release. It's also an expression, isn't it? You're expressing yourself, and I guess that's why it's different from day to day.
Yeah, that's right. And I think another thing for me recently as well, I've had some eye problems. So I don't have my sight isn't as good as it used to be. So I found more and more, and I think initially I sort of tried to refuse it, but now I'm embracing that more and more you can listen to things. You know, there are things like podcasts, as well as music, and you know there are so many things now that you can listen to, and that's opened my world up a bit more as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, even like night music, it's again listening to things that I mean, some of them are hilarious, some of them are great fun. Listening to some of these things. So
The other thing I wanted to mention quickly was lyrics. I mean, obviously lyrics are part of it. Do they have a strong impact on how you feel about singing, or is that? I know everyone's different on this one, you know.
no, definitely, I think so. I think and especially again when I was younger, I used to listen. I would listen more to songs that meant something, that had really good lyrics, that when you actually sung along to them, you could really engage with the lyrics. So no, I think they're really important.
As in teenage angst.
Yeah, well, ish. I think lyrics are very important.
Yeah.
You know, definitely. If you're singing along to a song, then you want to, sing along to something that sounds good as well, that means something. You know, the lyrics mean something. And I used to, when I was younger, I used to write quite a lot of poetry, so I think that makes a difference as well. I haven't written any songs, but I used to write things down all the time. So no, I think lyrics are really important.
Well, I mean, obviously I know you as a teacher of English as a foreign language, so I'm guessing, words and English is, something of interest to you. And for me, that's like another layer on top of it, which makes singing even more powerful. It's not just the melody itself can just be really powerful, like you say, classical music or just chanting. And when I say chanting, I should probably clarify. I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about sitting and singing om, although that's got its own benefits for people as well. But chanting in terms of historic music, where the lyrics are less important. I'm thinking of Black Betty, Bam Balam, and all these kinds of things where sometimes the music, the lyrics are not exactly nonsense, but incidental anyway. But anyway, coming back, I think the lyrics. Yeah. I think a powerful lyric, a good lyric, is another layer for that bit of expression as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got as you know, I've got 3 young children, so I listen to Radio 1 sometimes, and you put a bit of pop music on. I'm not against pop music at all. I'm really not. But sometimes you go, this is a catchy tune. Let's sing along, and then all of a sudden you're going, the lyrics are shocking.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's like, no, it really puts you off. It puts you off of what could be a catchy tune.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start singing the same old lyrics, it's like, no, it's all right. No.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I don't necessarily expect great lyrics in a pop song, but yeah, sometimes they can be so bad it's actually off-putting, isn't it?
Yeah, so lyrics, I think, they're definitely. But then again, like we were saying, lyrics mean different things to different people, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
One person will like a song that's very deep, and another person will like a song that isn't very deep.
Yeah,
so
and both of those things are valid, aren't they? Sometimes you want something a bit mindless. I should be so lucky. That's fine. It's just a pop song, and you take it for what it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. Other days you want something which is expressing, I don't know, either how you're feeling or something you can relate to, or as you know, I'm a big fan of lyrics as a form of therapy, really, and being able to express yourself and stuff. But maybe that's for another day. I don't know.
And then also there are days when you don't want lyrics. You just want to put some classical music on or something that's or something different. And you don't need to worry about the lyrics. I mean, sometimes as well, I quite like listening to some of this world music, and then I either don't understand the lyrics, or they are more sort of, chanting and noise.
I suppose that's what I meant by chanting, really. Yeah, world music, I suppose, is what I had in mind, or music which is in a foreign language where you don't understand it, but you can still appreciate it for what it is because of the rhythm and the melody.
I was just going to say that's what's really lovely, I think, and that's what is so satisfying with music, is that it's so diverse.
Yeah,
It's not boxed. It's not. There are so many different aspects of music that you could enjoy.
yeah.
Whether you want to sing, whether you want to play an instrument, whether you just want to listen, whether you want to just do some drumming. It's so diverse that it's fantastic, and I think that's why it's open to most people. Um,
And it's funny, one of the questions I got up here is, how can people get started on this if they want to? Well, of course, the great thing about singing is you just start doing it, don't you, really? So
yeah,
there aren't really any barriers to entry. That's another question. Are there, that I ask people, are there any barriers to entry, like costs or age or location or experience? Well, the great thing about singing is
no,
you just start doing it.
yeah, it's free. It's free. Also, the other thing is you can get a variety of apps at the touch of a click of a button now. So you can get an app that to learn to play the piano, or an app that will teach you to do something or other. So yeah, there are definitely lots of opportunities.
And I suppose the other thing we could mention, I suppose, if people get really stuck, is they can come to Rhythm Shack, and I'll help them out.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just going to say that's quite convenient as well. It's not just having lessons when you're at Rhythm Shack as well. It's quite nice because there's a nice little bunch of people who fire each other, feeling a bit rubbish.
That's the downside, I think, with apps and stuff, isn't it? Is that you lose that thing of. I mean, we opened up talking about your family singing around the piano. It's a community thing, isn't it? In your case, it was a family thing, but it's a community thing, and I think that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not massively personally one for choirs, but I do see the appeal for a lot of people for choirs because it's that thing of singing in a group together, And I think that's a really important aspect. It's also it can be a social thing as well, can't it?
The other thing with a choir as well, which I think is positive, is if you're not that confident, you can hide in the numbers unless you've got a solo piece.
Yeah.
The beauty of a choir is just hiding in the background and singing within a big group, and I think that's.
And I think, of course, when people do that kind of stuff, they increase their confidence and they increase their voice. Because you sing on a regular basis and you're not afraid to sing out loud. It also becomes less important about whether you're good or bad, maybe. And that's always, as you know, I'm always banging on about that. It's enjoying it is more important than being awesome at it.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And that's, the older you get, you sort of say, oh, I don't care quite so much. And it is more about just the enjoyment that you get out of it, definitely. Although, in the back of your head, you still care about what other people. Well, I don't care as much as I.
Absolutely. I think maybe as you get older, you care a bit less, but I think all of us still would like to be really good at it, But I think that's just one of those things. No matter how good you get at it, you're going to want to be better at it. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Your standards raise, and that's a good thing, I suppose. Well, I can see you've got the family back, so I probably should let you go. Thanks very much for chatting to me today. I think we've done a great job there of looking at how music and singing in particular can satisfy your soul. So hopefully this might inspire a few people to have a bit of a go and get their warble on, as it were. Just bear in mind the neighbours, folks, if you're going to do that, and the people around you, especially in lockdown. And I'll see you all in the next interview. Thanks very much for listening.
Lovely, thanks very much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jules.
All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's good as well.